Y'all need me to run this meeting or what?
Nah, we're going
We were
social.
waiting on you, but
Yeah. Happy Monday. It is our industry update. I almost said Mojo Monday, Rick. What do you think about that?
Because you're still having one. Why not?
I know, right? All right. I want to jump into the numbers this week, but I always like to kind of start around the feeling. Like, what's the feeling going on out there? Lee, you're in the trench.
yeah, we were just asking that question of our guests, and I think everyone was shy coming forward. But I can tell.
I didn't get the question.
It was, how are you feeling about the spring market? Now it has finally landed. What are you seeing out there?
I think just like, I guess, late last year to beginning of this year, it's hyper local, just hyper local. And for us as agents, we have to be super vigilant as far as staying on top of whatever areas we're going to work, and just keeping a good pulse for, what our clients are feeling, because you go into one market and it's longer days on market. We got the stats back from the first quarter, and the days on market it's like triple, but you go into some markets and it's multiple offers, and that's all the way up in Marietta. I just won some deals that we had to compete in multiple offer situations on multiple houses, and also Snellville and Stone Mountain, similar situations where it's multiple offers. So price points and location seems to be driving the market. I mean, the demand is there, but it just depends on where you are and what price, and it's going to depend so heavily on those things that it's hard to say an overall market more than just being hyper local.
You being the local expert, the local economist is really important, but you can also see out there it is possible to overprice, even though we have an undersupplied market. If you overprice your house, your listing will sit there.
Absolutely.
And that confuses buyers even more. It makes it so important to be able to advise your clients on a case-by-case basis as to whether a property is likely to sit there or whether they've got potentially time to make a short list. Yeah. I agree with the multiple offer thing. That's what on our team we're seeing a lot of at the moment. We're competing.
Absolutely. And to add to that, last thing is, I think that's where us as agents, we have more value if you are paying attention and digging into your market even more, as far as, okay, it could be a block, it could be a street, it could be, a city, just depends on where exactly you're looking. But if you could really understand the differences and you come in and the seller's like, oh, I want to start up here, and the stats and the scripts, you can get them to understand that, hey, you might want to start up here, but you might end up down here. Here's the stats that shows you that. But if we start here, we may be able to get you here because there is demand if we price it right. So I think it's an opportunity for us because it takes a lot more expertise right now.
It does, in terms of, I looked at one particular property the other day, the FMLS Real AVM valuation tool, which is generally quite accurate versus, say, a Zillow. But out of curiosity, I pulled, and there was a $700,000 span on one property with the auto valuations. It just underlines the value of you as an expert, a professional agent.
Well, the other thing to consider is the psychology of appraisers too, because I had dinner with an agent a couple of days ago, and she put a house under contract. It was actually a duplex, single side, but they went 35 over asking because of multiple offers. So, back to Richard's point, if there's competing offers, someone's going to overpay. Now, the catch is they had to go no appraisal contingency. Sucker came in $30,000 under, and her client's got to pay the difference. So just be aware. Appraisers recognize we're flattening likely in certain markets for sure, and the psychology of risk. The last time we saw a run up and then a shift, a lot of appraisers got into big trouble for being optimistic and overly optimistic, I should say. And that's something you might find as time goes on, is the optimism level may go down. And if you don't have that contingency, it could hurt you.
Mm-hmm. There you go. All right, moving on. Let's jump into numbers. Fulton County, we had 675 actives, 149. I got to fix this, but active under contract, 339 pending, and 304 closed. If I look at the charts up here, and I just kind of pull off some of these expireds and stuff, you can see the trends. So the active inventory is actually still on a trend going up. Our pendings are certainly gone up, and then they kind of look like they plateaued a little bit. Closings are still on an upward trajectory, and active under contracts are on an upward trajectory. This is spring market trending. Now I do think that if we were comparing it to previous years, we're considerably down, yet we don't have a comparison until second half of this year of actual a comparable market. What I mean by that is it was under 3% interest rates till about June last year. So we're not comparing apples to apples when we say the market's down 30% or whatever number we're quoting these days. So we're not really, I mean, yeah, I could write that media headline, but this is probably a little bit more of a realistic look at how we're trending, and everything's on the up. If I go to the other counties, let's run over here to DeKalb. You can see in the numbers when they come up here, same kind of story, right? So the brown line, the closed line is certainly trending up. The active under contract, it started low at the beginning of the year and has really come up. We're getting to some good levels of houses going under contract. If you go back and look at January 2022, the level of active under contracts broke 100 at that time. It broke 100 again in April, but it's been under 100 for quite a while, and we're trending quite a lot over 100 right now. So that's a good sign. But nonetheless, here's the actual numbers. Let me pop them over here. If I can get there, I got to get a better way to do this. 345 active, active in the MLS, 98 under contract, 227 pending, and 198.
It's a pickup, yeah.
The closed numbers, which of course, I think it's a mention worthy of a mention. This is an end of the month stat. So if you've been around real estate longer than 30 days, somebody's trained you to close all your houses at the end of the month. For whatever reason, we don't know anymore, but it tends to always happen at the end of the month. So worthy of a mention. Let me just pop through Cobb County real quick, and then we can get into the meat of this. Cobb County has 314 in active inventory. So they actually lost inventory in the MLS over the last 7 days. And I say lost, I think it closed. And I do think there's a lot of properties that expired yesterday. And the reason I think a lot of properties expired is we're tracking that like 20 to 30% of the real estate is now expiring. And we're seeing that in our stats. So inexperienced agents that aren't fighting the right pricing, they're not coaching their people into staging correctly. If you think about it, end of April, if I wrote a 90-day listing agreement that started February 1st, it would expire April 30th, right? And that's probably a bigger conversation because a year ago, what was the term you were writing into your listing agreements? 90 days? 30 days? I mean, I think you should pay attention, and the experienced agents, if I were to guess, are listing their houses with 6-month windows, if not longer, right now. And that's because the houses are taking longer to sell. And I do believe that's going to continue to go up. So worthy of a mention there.
Brett, quick question.
Yeah.
If you are doing a 6-month listing and it's not luxury, I mean, I think it said under, I mean, over 1.5 is a buyer's market, but like if the rest is a seller's market, and I think under $1 million, the days on market is like 45. If we're doing 6-month listings and it's getting, I mean, past that, even what, 90-day window, I mean, would you say like there needs to be adjustments on our end, or like what would you take from that? I mean, the fact that we would need a 6-month listing.
Listen, there's unknown factors out there right now.
Right.
So are you fighting for you and your business, or are you fighting for your seller? You and your business, you'd want as long of a window of time as possible, right? Because it gives you that the best opportunity to make that transaction happen. And, you know, the conversation, Richard, is what's your marketing plan look like? Has anybody actually gone back and adjusted what your marketing plan would look like if you had a listing that lasted longer than 2 months? What do you do? Well, we used to have marketing plans that said, this is how I'm going to market your house over a 6-month period, right? The agents haven't started to think that way, but I also think it's not too far into the future that you're going to have marketing strategies that last longer than 60 days. And I don't know. Anybody else want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, when I used to actively list houses, I would, have statistics from Chuck Carr's Chartmaster that said, here's what the top 25 or 30% do in the first 30 days. And if you haven't sold, at some point you become stigmatized, because unfortunately the media hasn't caught up with the reality that houses are taking longer. Everyone still thinks they all sell in a day or two or a week or two, because circumstantially that feels that way. So my response is always, be aggressive in pricing and realize you can't really underprice a house. In our market, where there's so many buyers waiting for the right deal, the key ingredient is to get multiple offers, so someone ultimately overpays and competes. And I'd also say that, show them the data to support that you really want to sell inside of 30 or 45 days. Once it gets to 3 months or 4 months, buyers start to wonder what's wrong with your house, and it becomes stigmatized, which is a great term to use. And it's no longer, oh my gosh, if we don't move quick, we're going to lose it. It becomes, why hasn't anyone bought it? Isn't the market still hot?
What's wrong with it?
Yeah, so you
listing
scrutinize a house differently that's been on the market a while.
And my eldest boy, when I had a long-running listing, one of those that you can't sidestep, you have to take. It's been referred by so many people, and 18 months for $1.5 million. My eldest boy was only 9 at the time. He referred to it as a rust bucket. If a 9-year-old can pick up a listing sitting on the market and come up with a term for it, you bet that your buyers and sellers out there can. But it's a really difficult market. Everything has to be on a house by house, case by case basis. You should be talking with that set of clients about what the plan is and what it is they're trying to achieve. Because for every house that's sitting there, 24 hours and multiple bids, that's still happening. There are houses now that are going 3, 4, 5, 6 months in because they didn't have the right pricing strategy.
Yeah, and if you're having,
and staging is a big deal.
it
huge.
is.
And we haven't staged in a while. And I'll remind everybody, if you go to our YouTube channel, I interviewed a company called Revive. Revive is actually Keller Concierge. So if you have a client that wants to list their house and you need to spend $10,000 on staging it to get it to look right, Revive will actually pay for that up front, and they pay for it at closing. It's part of that concierge package. So
for luxury, there's style to design as well. That looks pretty impressive.
Absolutely. All right, so let's run to a couple other conversations real quick.
Real quick, can I ask a question based off of what Lee said? I know it's a luxury listing, but at 1.5 or any listing, if you have a listing that's sitting that long, 18 months, is it a price factor? Because I mean, initially I think our price is too high, or is it like, how do you differentiate? Does it need better marketing?
This one's a war story. And it's one that I use in listing appointments. And I am sincere when I tell you that I went into the listing appointment, explained what I could sell their house for, and that it would take me 30 to 45 days. gave them all of the data. It was referred by, I think, 3 or 4 clients in that neighborhood. And they're like, no, we want to work with you. We just don't want to listen to you, is where it came. I took a view, but the last half of the listing, every week, I would get a question. We'd have 3 or 4 showings a week. We would get the same feedback. He wouldn't do anything. I'd get a question, what's happening? And I would send him a copy of my CMA from back at the beginning, because the market at the time wasn't really shifting a great deal.
Right.
And I just kept pointing back there. Eventually they got serious because the house they were building became ready, and suddenly it's, we want to sell. It cost them, we lost money on that, but that was just one where I took a view. I figured I would sell it eventually, but I was very, very upfront, and I had it in writing exactly what was going to happen. It played out that way. When my clients who had referred that piece of business to me asked what was happening, I had the same script for them. I went on to do other business with them, and they did actually listen in the following ones we did. But yeah, sometimes, that was one I genuinely couldn't walk away from. Usually in that situation, I wouldn't take the listing if they're not going to listen, because it does drain you. It's really hard work to repeat yourself over and over and over again.
Yep.
So can
I
I
need
add
to-
one
Thank
10-second thing?
I've got a lot of stuff I want to cover today, guys. So let's keep going.
All right.
Go
Just
ahead, Rick.
remember, you live in the Missouri state. It's the show me state. Whenever I have trouble getting a client to understand from my words and my pictures, I throw them in the car and we go look at the houses that are under contract and the ones that closed, and then go, there's their kitchen. Here's your kitchen. What do you see differentially? They usually get it once they walk through and recognize they've been a bridesmaid 5 times and somebody else got picked. So over time,
what's that show? 27 Dresses or whatever.
I only have one though. I limit myself on dresses, but
There you go, Rick. All right, moving on.
I just wanted to see Mark smile.
New construction stats. I've added April. So you can see Cherokee County 35 closed at a median price per square foot of 242 for new construction. Look at the gaps between March and April in the price per square foot. So it went from 216 to 242. February was 231. So there's a big price push on new construction here. Cobb County went from 219 to 252. DeKalb went 276 to 323. You can kind of see Fulton went from 211 down to 203. These were pretty consistent. You can take a look at these counties on the screen, but here's what a couple comments around new construction. So this is a new stat we've been tracking. Builders certainly operate in quarters. So you'll notice there's less closings in April than there were in March, because builders are motivated to close out their quarters in a aggressive way. Now, what should we know about that in our business? You might get a better deal on a new construction if you close it in June versus July, because the builder might be motivated to close it out in second quarter. I don't know yet. I don't have enough data. We just started tracking this year. And one of my ahas as we started tracking this is you can see it in certain parts of the city. The builders are pushing these prices up. You could look in Cobb County, everything on the market right now, the actives are the median price per square foot's $248.80, and they just closed out 14 in April for $252.46. So you can see they're pretty justified in their asking price, right? So it's worthy of taking a look. You get to some of the further out counties like Bartow, they're asking 193, but it's 143, 164, 173, 168. 193 might be pretty aggressive. And this data gives you a little bit of ammunition to go into a negotiation with the builder, or you may see where you have room for negotiation and you may see where you don't. Any comments on that?
Just be careful with some of the counties with so few in the test number, because it may be an anomaly house or two that could be low or high that shifts the number, and it's not apples to apples. You
Of
know,
course.
not that there's a lot of $200,000 houses on the market, but you know, the upgrades and finishes in a 800,000 versus 350 might be different. And
Oh,
drive the
100%. Well,
What
if
do
you
you
look at Fayette County, look at this. I mean, they had 4 closed in February for a median price of 52.
So
They had
something's up
2
there.
closed with 479. So that's the real number, but that's all over the place. To
what do
your
you
point.
guys make of Fordham County then, with 288 per square foot median for?
You know,
for-
I hate that Fulton County is not classified in FMLS separately,
that's
because Alpharetta's obviously going to price different than
it's a huge county, isn't it?
an East Point. But you know, if you're tracking it consistently, the numbers should give you some kind of a trend over time.
I think it goes back to the work that you do to be the expert should be hyper local for the people that you're representing.
100%. I'm doing this data to see where the construction's going on, one, and to see the difference in prices based on different
I think it's great.
geographical areas of the city. And I mean, look, you've got some new construction in the 150s south of town. And then I'm assuming a lot of this stuff north of town is $100 more a square foot.
Yeah.
So if somebody's more interested in square footage than geography, that gives you a little bit of intel. But anyway, it's just worthy of a conversation. The other big talking point this week is this First Republic Bank. So I wanted to talk about 2 comments and then any other comments you guys have. So First Republic Bank's the latest bank collapse, if you will. Yet I want to give you perspective. So about 90 days ago, we had 2 other banks collapse. And when that happens, somebody has egg on their face, and they did a bunch of research. And through that research, they kind of created a list of banks that were at risk, and they kind of exposed it. And there's a funny quote that always says, when the tide goes out, you can tell who's skinny dipping, right? And the bottom line is, there are banks that their balance sheet doesn't look very healthy. And if they're exposed, the consumers will make a run on the bank and pull their money out. And First Republic Bank is the latest in that conversation. And there's a second part of this conversation, which is the PNC Financial Services, JP Morgan and Chase, and Citizens were among the banks that submitted final bids to acquire that bank. So I don't think that we're at risk of a banking collapse. I think we're at risk of a bad banking collapse. And there are the big fish are going to eat up the little fish. And in this conversation, it certainly looks like PNC Financial Services, Chase, and Citizens are kind of the big fish that are well positioned. And there's actually a side conversation here, which is when economic times are great, expansion happens, little fish get big quickly. And you'll find that in the banking industry where little banks pop up. You'll find it in the restaurant world where you see a lot of mom and pop restaurants. You'll find it in our world. There, all the mom and pop brokerages start to pop up when the economy's great, right?
The small banks rode the crypto wave and
Yeah.
risky loans, but your point is there's expansion, there's market share being grabbed because Republic was it says the 14th biggest lender in the US. So some of the bigger banks are just, taking market share.
I think you're going to see a lot of that. I don't think we're at financial risk of any kind of collapse. I think we're at a merger and acquisition stage where whether it's restaurant chains, hotel chains, large real estate companies like us, large banks like Chase or Citizens, they're positioned to thrive in the current economic state. And I think you're going to see a lot of mergers and acquisitions and things like that in the future. Yeah.
Hey, and it's no different than realtors. I mean, we're going to probably lose some of our, fellow realtors who aren't poised in position, don't have the lead gen or the service models to compete. And that's going to create market share and opportunity for the bigger players who are stable and well-heeled to take market share. So just keep in mind, great time to also, just like, you've got Chase. If I'm going to bank, I'm going to go consider PNC and Chase. If they can afford to buy banks, they're probably stable. Yeah. And so if you're that guy, you can also acquire talented people who don't know how to run their business like a business and build your team in a down market a little more effectively. So just keep in mind, there's talent 100%. Waiting.
I mean, and the question is, if you had $1 million to deposit in a bank tomorrow, are you going to go deposit it in the small, medium bank in rural Georgia? Or are you going to deposit it in a Chase, a Citizens, right? Like, I'm probably going to go deposit it in one of the bigger companies. Just a funny comment on that. Somebody said to me a while back, they said, I'm moving to Bank of America. That's the last bank in the world they're going to let collapse. I went, that makes sense. Anyway, there's your industry update for Monday. We start and end on time, even though I was a minute late. Bye.
Thank you. Cheers.
All right, guys. Bye. See ya.